We all love a good perspective shift, but so many isometric gems just end up buried under the massive AAA releases that dominate the headlines every year. And honestly, it is a real shame because some of these titles offer mechanical depth and creative world building that you simply cannot find anywhere else. So let's finally give these games the spotlight they actually earned and jump right into 10 underrated isometric titles you need to check out. Okay, so let's kick this list off right away with Kill Knight, and this is one of those games that I genuinely feel bad for sleeping on. The premise is simple. You are a dead knight in really cool armor, and you are stuck in hell fighting waves of demons. Light stuff. But, one thing that I found unique in this game is how it handles combat. It is an isometric shooter, but it plays more like a rhythm game. You have your basic pistols, which have infinite ammo, and then a bigger weapon with limited ammo. To get more ammo for the big gun, you have to go in for melee kills, so right away the game is forcing you to be aggressive. It doesn't want you hiding in a corner. Then when you kill enemies, they drop these red gems. And picking them up makes you faster and does more damage, but it also fills up your wrath meter. And when that meter is full, you can hit a button and just explode, turning nearby enemies into health packs. So the whole game becomes this loop of shooting, dash in for a slice, grab the shiny things, blow up, then repeat. It is super intense, and honestly it feels amazing when you get into that flow. The developers, Playside, they really understood the assignment. They built a game where the better you play, the more powerful you feel, which is exactly what you want from an arcade-style experience. It flew under the radar for a lot of people because it came out in a packed October, but trust me, if you are a fan of twin-stick shooters or just want a game you can pick up for 10 minutes and feel like a god, this is it. It is challenging, it is stylish, and it absolutely deserves a spot in your library. Alright, coming in next, let's talk about Menace. This is a new tactics game from the people who made Battle Brothers, and if you know that game, you know exactly what you are getting into. Pain, suffering, and really good tactical combat. You are in charge of a space marine force that gets stranded in a lawless system, and you have to recruit locals, manage your ship, and fight off everything from pirates to alien bugs. The thing that makes it click for me is the personality. Every squad leader you bring into battle has a name, a history, and they talk to each other. When they get suppressed, they panic. When a friend dies, they sound genuinely upset. It makes you care about these little digital sprites in a way most games don't bother with, and the combat is deep without being overwhelming. You have to think about cover, about which way a tank is facing, about whether to use a rocket now or save it for the next wave. It feels like playing a tabletop war game, but without needing a rule book the size of a dictionary. Now, this game just came out earlier this month of February, and it's in early access, and while the hardcore strategy community is buzzing, the average gamer has probably never heard of it. That is a shame because this has the potential to be one of the greats. If you have a Steam account and a few hours to lose, do yourself a favor and check it out. Okay, so next up we have Retracted. So remember the Callisto Protocol, the spiritual successor to Dead Space that looked amazing but had some mixed reviews? Well, the same developers made this little isometric roguelike set in that same prison, and honestly it might actually be better than the original game. You play as a guard trying to get to the last escape pod, but you are competing against other survivors. And these aren't just generic enemies, they are characters with names and backstories. You have this one guy, a violent gangster, who will literally challenge you to a one-on-one fight in the middle of a run. It keeps you on your toes. The combat is fast and fluid. You are dashing, shooting, and meleeing your way through rooms of infected inmates, and it just feels good in your hands. The developers said they really focused on making the controls responsive, and you can tell, but my favorite mechanic is the corpse fights. Every time you die, your ghost stays in the prison with all the gear you had, and on your next run, you have to fight that ghost to get a permanent upgrade. I mean, it is such a smart way to make death meaningful without being punishing, right? Now, this game came out in 2024, and, it just kind of came and went. I think the weird title and the fact that it is a spin-off hurt it, but either way, if you like Hades or Children of Morta, you owe it to yourself to check this out. It is chaotic, it is stylish, and it is way better than it has any right to be. Coming in next, we have Disciples Domination, and this one picks up 15 years after the last game, Liberation. You are back as Queen Aviana, and spoiler alert, being queen is not going great. She spent the last decade and a half making some pretty questionable decisions, the factions are at each other's throats, and now some new supernatural threat is bubbling up to make everything worse. So you have to step in and clean up the mess. The game throws you into this isometric world where you are riding around on horseback, exploring, talking to people, and managing your capital city of Ilion between battles. But you know, what I love about this setup is the throne mechanic. You can fast travel back to court whenever you want, and suddenly you are dealing with faction reputation, upgrading buildings, and deciding who gets what resources. It makes you feel like an actual ruler, not just a general. Now the combat is turn-based on a grid, and they added this really smart feature where before a fight, the game straight up tells you which units will be strong or weak against the enemies you are facing. No more guessing or reloading saves because you brought the wrong squad. It is accessible without feeling dumbed down. That said, the whole experience clocks in around 40 hours, and it can get a bit repetitive if you try to mainline it in one sitting. It is the kind of game you play in chunks, letting it breathe between other titles. And look, the writing is a little hit or miss. Some of the dialogue sounds way too modern for a dark fantasy world, and the voice acting can feel forced at times, but the overall story is solid enough to keep you pushing forward. This game also came out this month, and it is sitting around a 73 on Metacritic, which feels about right. It is not rewriting the rulebook, but if you want a competent, meaty strategy RPG that respects your time, this one is worth a look. Next on the list, we have Sector Unknown. You know, this one kind of came out of nowhere. It is a solo-developed isometric sci-fi RPG from a guy named at Creative Storm Entertainment, and honestly, it is way more polished than you would expect from a one-person team. You start as a prisoner on a transport ship, you escape in a pod, and you crash land on this desolate planet called Maku. That planet becomes your home base, your stronghold, the place you build up while you explore the rest of the sector. The game wears its inspirations on its sleeve. You've got Fallout 2, Knights of the Old Republic, Wasteland 3 all in the DNA, but the execution here feels fresh. The skill system is deep. We are talking 6 physical attributes, plus skills like engineering, computers, biology, finances, piloting, and then the social ones like intimidation and persuasion. Every conversation, every locked container, every quest has these skill checks built in, and here is the kicker. They ramp up hard. Like, early checks might need 10 skill points, but by the end, you are looking at checks of 90 or 100. So you cannot be a jack of all trades. You have to specialize. You have to build a party where each person handles 1 or 2 skills and maxes them out. It is that old school crunch that makes character building actually matter. Now the combat is turn-based, but it flows quickly because the AI handles your companions unless, you want to micromanage every move. You are recruiting people across different planets, each with their own side quests, building up this rebellion against the Star Frontier Corporation that runs the sector like a dictatorship. It is dense, it is ambitious, and for a game that costs around $22, it delivers 15-20 hours of content easily. It flew under the radar because it is a solo project that dropped into early access without a massive marketing push, but the very positive reviews on Steam do not lie. This is the kind of hidden gem that makes lists like this worth putting together.
Lend an ear to this tale of treachery. Set sail for vengeance. Face the unknown.
Coming in next, we have Rogue Waters, and this one comes from Ice Code Games, the same folks who made Hard West 2. You play as Captain Cutter, a pirate who gets betrayed by his old captain, left for dead with a cursed eye, and then wakes up a decade later to find out he is immortal. So naturally, you go on a revenge trip, but the reason this game hooked me is the combat. It is turn-based tactical stuff, but instead of the usual percentage-based hit chances that always seem to screw you over, they did something smarter. Every melee attack pushes the target backward. If they hit an obstacle, they take extra damage. If they hit another enemy, that enemy takes damage too. If they have nowhere to go, they just die instantly. So suddenly, you are not just trading blows, you are setting up chain reactions like a pool shot. You are positioning your crew to shove guys into spikes, off the ship, or into each other. It feels tactical without feeling like homework, and you get an undo button, so if you mess up a move, you can just rewind and try something else. That alone makes it more approachable than most games in the genre. Plus, you have sea monsters. Free the Kraken from captivity, and it will crush your enemies during fights. Free the mermaid, and she disrupts their formations. There is even a giant snail that drops a spiked obstacle on the deck. It is weird, it is creative, and it is exactly the kind of mid-budget gem that deserves more eyes on it. Alright, coming in next, we have Sworn, and this is one of those games that I think got a bit lost in the noise. It is a co-op roguelite from Windwalk Games, published by Team 17, and it came out in 2025 to some solid reviews, but never really blew up the way it should have. So here's the deal. You are in Camelot, but it is not the Camelot you remember. King Arthur is corrupted, the knights are all bad guys now, and you have to fight your way through this dark fantasy world to set things straight. You play as one of several unlockable characters, each with their own weapons and play styles. Like, we have a monk that uses magic, a rook who is a tank, a vigilante that is kind of fast and sneaky, and the whole time you are collecting blessings from these Fey Lords, which are basically gods that give you cool powers like fire attacks, wind spells, etc. Basically, these will become your skills, and there are 100 of these things, so every run feels different. Now, the best part for me is that this game is 4-player co-op game. When you get a group together, the game just sings. You can combo your abilities, revive each other, and generally cause mayhem. The art style is also worth mentioning. It is inspired by Hellboy comics, so you get these thick black lines and dramatic shadows that make everything look really striking. Now, it is not perfect. The story is pretty thin, and if you are playing alone, it can feel a bit repetitive, but honestly, for the price and the amount of content, it is a steal. If you like roguelites and you have friends to play with, you owe it to yourself to check this out. Now, next up, we have Hellclock, and okay, look, I know you're going to say that it's another roguelike game, right? And yeah, I totally get that. You've got a fair point, but hear me out because this one is different. This is from a Brazilian studio called Rogue Snail, and instead of Greek gods or generic fantasy, it is based on a real historical event, the War of Canudos, where the Brazilian army wiped out a whole settlement in the 1890s. So you will be playing as this dead guy fighting through purgatory to save his mentor's soul, which, kind of edgy, right? But the gameplay is where it gets good. It is basically Path of Exile meets Hades. You have got this massive skill tree, dozens of relics to slot into a Tetris-style grid, and abilities that can turn you into an absolute monster. I had a run where I turned my character into an electric Beyblade just spinning through everything, and I could not stop laughing. Now, full disclosure, at launch the movement was a little janky. You had to stop to cast stuff, which in a game this fast is a problem, but the devs just dropped an update and they completely reworked it. Full 360 movement, casting on the run, input buffering the whole package. It feels smooth now. Plus, they've also got a whole expansion coming this year. And the game also sits at 82 on Metacritic, which is insane for a smaller title. So yeah, maybe you have played 100 roguelites, but you have not played one set in 19th century Brazil with a ticking clock and a relic system that actually makes you think. So yeah, feel free to check it out.
This cursed monastery devours the soul. We are 5, broken, tormented, and hunted by shadows both real and imagined.
Coming in next, we have The Stone of Madness. Look, this is one of those games that I think deserves way more love than it got. It came out early last year from the Game Kitchen, the folks behind Blasphemous, and it is a total departure from their usual style. I mean, instead of a 2D action game, this is an isometric stealth tactics game set in this massive old monastery in 18th century Spain. You control 5 prisoners who are all trying to escape, and they each have their own strengths and weaknesses. There's the monk with a lamp, the strong guy who can move heavy stuff, the old witch lady, the agile woman who can knock people out, and a little kid who can fit through small spaces. The twist is that they all have phobias, so the strong guy is afraid of the dark, the fighter lady is afraid of fire, the monk cannot handle dead bodies. Kind of chaotic, right? So if you put them in situations that trigger these fears, their sanity starts dropping. Let it hit 0, and they develop permanent new problems like claustrophobia or paranoia. You can only bring 3 characters out each day, so you are constantly playing this puzzle of who to take where. And because the game only saves at the end of each day, you cannot just reload when someone loses their mind. You have to roll with it. The art style is gorgeous, all hand-painted and inspired by the Spanish painter Goya. The music is great too, but it is hard, like really hard, and some people found the controls frustrating. Still, if you are into stealth games and want something with a unique setting and real emotional weight, give this one a shot.
I'm a game deck. I solve crimes in virtual worlds. Like a murder over a Game Clan dispute.
And finally, let's talk about Game Deck. This is another kind of a lower budget isometric RPG in the vein of Disco Elysium with an intriguing premise, but maybe some flaws in its execution. But that's not to say the game's not worth your time. Quite the opposite, in fact. It's an interesting, flawed game. Hardly got noticed when it came out. Sometimes an imperfect game is a little bit more interesting than a perfect one. And this one certainly qualifies. It has got to be my favorite kind of jank, though. Lofty ambitions, but you can tell the devs were saddled with limited resources. The big thing with Game Deck is the way it integrates a meta experience of playing video games with its world. It's one of the first cyberpunk stories that actually focuses on the internet or its natural evolution, a kind of MMORPG, metaverse, whatever. It's a neat idea that doesn't quite tell a story to its full potential, but what is here is interesting enough. It's intriguing. It's something that probably should have been part of a bigger game to really work, and it's one of those games where you can definitely feel the budgetary struggles of its dev team, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game. They clearly put everything they had into the game. It's actually packed with fairly robust gameplay systems. It's a true RPG in every sense. Player choices everywhere along with a robust character growth system. It's not one of the better isometric RPGs on this list, but it's certainly one of the most interesting. And it's also flawed in a way that makes it a little bit more interesting. But yeah, those are just some of the best underrated isometric games that we highly recommend. Again, these games are surely not perfect. They are flawed, but I think they are all worth playing. If you like this video, click the like button. If you're not yet subscribed, now is the best time to do so. And as always, thanks for watching and see you in the next one.